Follow us on Instagram. Check us out on Twitter. I've been putting out a couple tweets over the last couple weeks, trying to get back in the groove on that. I know it's been a minute since I've been posting on that regularly, but school and everything gets a little bit distracting sometimes. But right now, we are in the thick of the sports season. Sit back, enjoy it, because this week right here is as good as it gets if you're a sports fan. You've got the World Series. This is the last week of baseball. We're going to get until March if you like spring training, April if you wait till the regular season. The NBA is back. The NFL is going on. College football, WWE is in the build up to Survivor Series. We got even boxing's getting in on it with Jake Paul and Mike Tyson here in a couple weeks. So this right here is prime time, and there's no better way to kickstart this episode covering the hot time of the year in the sports calendar than to talk about maybe the coolest thing that has ever happened in professional sports, which is Freddie Freeman living out every young boy's daydreams. When you get bored in class, you doze off, and you think about where would you rather be if you're like a 12-year-old kid. Where would you rather be the math class? Why? Hitting a walk-off grand slam in the World Series. And Freddie Freeman became the first player in MLB history to do just that on Friday night against the Yankees. It was an extra innings game. It went down to the wire, but with Freddie Freeman stepping up to the plate in the 10th inning, that was a wrap on that. And the only way that it could have been better was if it was a game seven. And I will say too, in my daydreams, I always hit it out over the Green Monster in Fenway, and it went out of the stadium. But that's neither here nor there. You can't be picky. And a walk-off grand slam in the World Series in extra innings is just, I mean, what more can you say? That's just insane. It's one of those scenarios that I never thought we would see. I mean, there have been 696 World Series games, and that was the first time that it ever happened. And so that put the Dodgers ahead in game one, 6-3. Aside from Freddie's grand slam, Giancarlo Stanton hit a two-run homer for the Yankees, and those are only two home runs hit. The rest were just regular, singles, doubles, all that good stuff. But the biggest takeaway, aside from the two home runs, was a lack of performance out of Aaron Judge and Shohei Ohtani. They were both really quiet in game one. Both went 1 for 5. And Aaron Judge was particularly notable for striking out 3 times in game one. Like, that's just not something you want out of your star player. And in game two, the Dodgers won 4-2, and he continued to struggle. He went 0 for 4 last night and struck out 3 more times. Your star player going 1 for 9 with 6 strikeouts isn't exactly your recipe for success in the World Series. And from all the strikeout videos I've seen, it looks like he's swinging under the ball pretty much every single time. There was one time last night when Yamamoto, who was the Dodgers pitcher, he got him to chase after it, reach outside. It was a ball, but Aaron Judge really wanted to make something happen. And that's when people say a lot that baseball is 90% mental, 10% actual on field displays of athleticism. That's the kind of stuff they mean, I think, is when you're in a slump like that, you want more than anything to just be able to make contact, get that one big hit to announce, all right, we're back in the swing of things. Old Aaron Judge is here. And when you go 1 for 9, I mean, at that point, I guess he was 1 for 8, 1 for 7, something like that. But you just get in such a mindset where you want to make that big play that you end up hurting yourself and chasing after balls that are clearly outside the strike zone just because you want to get that big hit and not just take the walk. And he said after the game pretty much the same thing. He said he's trying too hard to make a big play and needs to just let the game come to him. And I mean, that's an astute observation on his part, and Yankees fans better hope that he can relax and find a groove soon, or this could end up being a sweep. And part of what separates the all-time greats from the really good players is their ability to set themselves apart when the lights get brightest. And Aaron Judge has been wilting under the lights this postseason. His strikeout percentage has gone up 10%. That's especially tough for him because he's playing in the same franchise that produced Mr. October and Mr. November in its history, and has an all-time roster of other greats who've led their teams to the World Series. Even though it's been 15 years since they've made the big series, Yankees fans are still Yankees fans. They booed him in 2022 when he played bad in the ALCS, and if he doesn't turn it around and get some big hits tomorrow and Tuesday, you're probably going to hear some boos thrown his way. And if the Yankees do manage to turn this thing around, but not because of Aaron Judge, if they win in spite of him and not because of him, that'll be a big stain on his legacy. And I like Aaron Judge. That's not something I want him to have to deal with. I think it's good for baseball to have all-time great players with all-time great moments like Freddie Freeman's. And, talk about having an all-time great moment on the line. The commentators were talking about this. They said if Freddie Freeman and the Dodgers go on to win the World Series, that grand slam will become iconic a la Kirk Gibson, Hank Aaron, like that level of iconic home run. But if they lose, that great game-winning extra innings walk-off grand slam in the World Series just becomes a footnote because it will have meant nothing in the end if the Dodgers don't win. So, from that perspective, I really hope the Dodgers win just so we get to continue to see that replay on the highlight reels of all-time great World Series moments. But they'll be at Yankee Stadium on Monday and Tuesday, so hopefully being at home can give Aaron Judge some confidence. And the Dodgers need to be concerned about Shohei Ohtani. For starters, he's not doing much better than Aaron Judge, and he's 1 for 8 on the series. The biggest difference between the two is Aaron Judge has been striking out just about every time, and Shohei, for his part, has at least been making contact, so that's not quite as disheartening. It's just a matter of getting the ball in the right spot. But the Dodgers should mostly be worried about Shohei because he dislocated his shoulder yesterday, sliding into second base in the bottom of the seventh. He got thrown out trying to steal second. And to be honest, the slide didn't look like anything that special. I don't know what it was about it that dislocated his shoulder. When he dropped down, he fell really hard, like on his wrist, like he had his arm out. So it might have just been the impact of him dropping down to slide that did it. But whatever it was, he was on the ground for a couple minutes. He kept grabbing his tricep or in his forearm area, which was why I was kind of surprised when it came out today that the issue was he dislocated his shoulder, because at no point from what I saw did he ever like reach up to his shoulder. It was always like right here. But Dodgers fans better hope that this doesn't have a major impact on his performance. He's going to play tomorrow. They've already come out and said it. So it's more, I think, a matter of psyche. I mean, like I said, he's not been playing great. He's 1 for 8, and he's a designated hitter, so it's not like, back on his Angels days and he was a pitcher and a hitter where he could pitch really good to make up for poor performance on the batting sphere. They've been winning without him, but he's still an X factor. He's still their superstar player. I mean, him and Freddie are both superstars, but he's clearly the face of the team from a media and just like franchise love perspective. So to have him go down, it's a big blow. It's kind of like when Willis Reed was out for the Knicks in the 1970s finals, and just like the fact that he was able to make it back out on the court for game 7 was enough to boost the Knicks' spirits and push them to win, even though Willis Reed only had 4 points in that game. So I think having Shohei available will be big, and having him be at least somewhat true to form will be a huge thing psychologically for the Dodgers going forward. So Freddie, though, has been the Dodgers superstar in this series. He hit another home run last night in the bottom of the third, and not only did he go yard, but immediately before him, Teoscar Hernandez hit a 2-run home run too. And there was another home run the inning before, the second inning, by Tommy Edman. And that right there was pretty much it for the Dodgers. They got 4 runs by the bottom of the third, and they were pretty much checked out for the night after that. Edman had a really nice double in the third too. He's been playing good. I didn't know much about him before I've started following the Dodgers in this playoff series, but he's been a stud from what I've seen. And I've also noticed that Freddie Freeman started this trend of the Dodgers players doing a certain dance whenever they make it to second base, and that's been pretty funny to watch them do. It's good to see them enjoying themselves, especially because they have been playing pretty good baseball so far. So I mean, their spirits are high, and if they can keep riding it out like that, I think the Dodgers have all the confidence in the world going forward. So as I said, Tommy Edman hit a home run in the second that made it 1-0. Juan Soto hit a home run for the Yankees at the top of the third. So at that point, it looked like we might be in for a good back and forth close game like Friday night. But then when Hernandez and Freddie hit their home runs and made it 4-1, that pretty much crushed that idea. He didn't do anything too major, but I do want to shout out Mookie Betts too. He went 2 for 4 last night, and he had 2 solid hits. One was a good single to left, and the other was a good single to right field. It was pretty much the same hit, to be honest. Just a nice little steamer over the infielders' heads, but in front of the outfielders. Just what you need, and it's the kind of value of a dual threat like that can't be understated. The ability to just hit the ball to left field, right field, pull the ball, whatever you want to go. That is a huge X factor in baseball that the great players can master, and I think it speaks to Mookie Betts' skill levels that he's able to do that. But the game pretty much was like a 4-0, just kind of stayed that way. Felt like a lot of treading water. The Yankees never really got a lot of momentum going until the top of the ninth. Giancarlo Stanton got an RBI because he hit a grounder that went really, like, it was a steaming hot grounder, and it bounced and like rolled right into third base, and it shot up in the air like a rocket and ended up going over the third baseman, and he ended up getting an RBI off that. But that was a pretty funny play, and there's nothing you can do about that as a third baseman. But unfortunately, the Yankees weren't able to take advantage of it. I mean, the bases ended up getting loaded, and they got left loaded. For a second, I'm sure Yankees fans were fingers crossed they were going to get to respond to Freddie's walk-off grand slam with a ninth-inning grand slam of their own. But the bases were loaded, and you left what could have been a game-winning ninth-inning comeback on the table. And the most frustrating part is not to keep harping on him, but Aaron Judge got a chance to bat during that rally, and he struck out. So, I mean, not only has he just like not come up clutch generally in the World Series, like as far as any sort of playoff performance is clutch, but he also choked in the top of the ninth with a chance to make a big comeback and maybe steal one at home in a heartbreaking way and give the Yankees some momentum going into game 3. But as it stands, game 3, I'm taking the Dodgers. They just have it all going for them right now. I think they're in a good spot. And I think it really depends on Aaron Judge being able to get a jolt of momentum and get something going. Jack Flaherty's pitching for the Dodgers, and Clark Smith's pitching for the Yanks tomorrow. Flaherty's 13-7 this season with a 3.17 ERA, and Smith is 5 for 5 with a 2.85 ERA. So make of that what you will. I mean, the way that pitchers get changed out so routinely these days, it kind of undercuts the importance of a starting pitcher matchup. I used to, whenever you're looking at the starting pitchers and like trying to gauge their stats, like, oh, who's got the advantage? The starting pitcher was going for like the first 7 innings of the game. So it really did influence a huge chunk of how the game was going to turn out. Now they get changed out. You got like an opening pitcher, a mid-game pitcher, a middle second half pitcher, then you got like 2 closers. So, I mean, it doesn't make the pitching matchup as fun to get invested in, but those are the stats for whatever that is worth. Over in the NBA, the Celtics and Lakers have both gotten off to a really hot start. And there are 7 teams that are currently still undefeated after either 2 or 3 games. The Celtics, the Lakers, and the Cavs are the only 3-0 teams. And the Hawks, Thunder, Pelicans, and Warriors are both 2-0 right now. I would not have guessed the Hawks would have been one of those last 7 teams to remain undefeated. Unfortunately, I don't think that's going to stay that way because they're playing the Thunder tonight at 8 o'clock. So one of those 2 teams is no longer going to be undefeated, and I've got a sinking feeling it's going to be the Hawks. Though I will say Trae Young has been off to a really hot start this season. He's got 38 points in the opener, 30 points the game after that, or maybe I got the 2 games mixed up, but he's averaging over 30 points this season on 45% shooting and over 10 assists. So hopefully he can get back into form. I mean, the Hawks have just been really inconsistent. And they made the conference finals in 2021, and then the next year they were like an 8th seed, and last year they missed the playoffs. So hopefully they can get back into 2021 form. I mean, Trae Young, people have been spreading rumors that this might be his last year with the Hawks. And I hope that they do it good enough to keep him around, because if Trae Young leaves, then the Hawks are pretty much in rebuilding mode again. And that trade with Luka Doncic just hurts that much more because we didn't even get a franchise star out of it. So hopefully the Hawks can stick around, be good, be competitive this season. But Trae Young's not the only one who's been off to a tear. Jason Tatum has been lighting it up too. He's averaging 33 points a game right now. And most people are saying it's because he's trying to prove something after the Olympics where Steve Kerr had him bench most of the time. And I really hope that's the case. It's always nice to see players play with the vendetta in their head, like Michael Jordan, take it personally. But that kind of edge to your game, I think, is a lot of fun. And that's an interesting dynamic of how, if you compare Jason Tatum to Aaron Judge, using something that is a setback to fuel you versus hurt you. And I think it's 2 setbacks that are very distinct, though. Jason Tatum's setback wasn't anything that was inherent in his playing ability that would make him question his own self-confidence. Jason Tatum's setback was lack of playing time that restricted his ability to put his skills on display. So it makes sense that he's fully confident in his ability, and that would help him play to another level because he's really mad that he didn't get to show that off on a national stage. It doesn't make him second guess his own skill and make him desperate in a way to take advantage of what little opportunities he gets and force up shots and things like that to get himself out of a slump. That's kind of the situation Aaron Judge is in, where he's not being deprived of the opportunity. He's just been not playing well. And so he's so desperate to play well that it's actually impeding his ability to do just that. So that's a really nuanced technical breakdown of Jason Tatum versus Aaron Judge. But I think it's just interesting how sports can work on that granular of a level. But not only has Jason Tatum been playing really good for the Celtics so far, Jaylen Brown is averaging 24.7 points a game too. And the Celtics are looking really dangerous. I think they have to be the favorites in the Eastern Conference and the favorites in the entire NBA to repeat this year, barring injuries. And I keep hoping that the Bucks will get into gear and be a good contender for them, just because I would love to see a playoff matchup between Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown and Giannis and Dame Lillard. But the Bucks, I mean, it's 2 games in, so you can't make a whole lot out of it. But they've already lost a game to the Bulls, who aren't expected to be a major contender. They do have a good lineup, but they've kind of been NBA Siberia since Derrick Rose got hurt. But they lost 133 to 122, even though Giannis scored 38 and Dame had 28. The Bulls had 6 players in double digits, and 4 of those players scored over 15. 3 of those players scored over 20. The Bucks only had 4 players in double digits, and nobody except for Giannis and Dame scored over 11 points. So, I mean, being a top-heavy team that can't hold on to the ball because the Bucks also had 14 turnovers, which is crazy, especially when like your 2 best players are primarily ball handlers, like Giannis and Dame. I would imagine are the ones generally bringing the ball up the floor. Like you don't want to see them getting stripped all the time. I mean, 10 of those 14 turnovers were steals. So I mean, just not a good game for the Bucks as far as holding on to the ball and distributing the ball. I mean, you can't win basketball games like that. It's not a recipe for long-term success. The Lakers have been doing really well too. I mean, that would just be something if the MLB gets a World Series of the Dodgers and the Yankees. Somehow, some way, the NBA manages to pull off a Lakers Celtics finals. That would just be too much of a good thing for the sports league. I don't know what the NFL equivalent of that would be. Maybe like I mean the Cowboys would have to be in there, and I don't know. But anyways, the Lakers that they beat the Timberwolves, the Suns, and the Kings. In the Timberwolves games, the Lakers got to allow LeBron and Bronny to become the first father-son duo to share a court in NBA history. Bronny had 3 minutes of playing time and managed to get a rebound, but went 0 for 2 from the field, and he hasn't played since. So the reports coming out are that he'll be splitting time between the NBA and the G League. And if I had to go out on a limb, I'd say he'll be spending a lot more time in the G League than he will the NBA. I feel like there's going to be some sort of concerted effort to make sure that he gets his first bucket this season at some point, and I'm sure he will. I'm honestly surprised that they didn't give him more time the other day on Tuesday to get his first points, especially since, I mean, the Lakers, it wasn't a blowout, but it was a fairly assertive win. So, and if they were going to give Bronny more than 3 minutes, they could have gotten away with it. So the things to look out for as far as LeBron and Bronny sharing the floor together, as far as I can tell, are only 2 things left for them to do, and that you got to get Bronny, feed LeBron for an assist, and you got to have LeBron get an assist on Bronny. So once they do those 2 things, then all of the first-time father, son, whatever, like all of that stuff will be behind them, and we can all move on to bigger and better things. But LeBron is in year 22 now, which ties Vince Carter for the longest career in NBA history if he makes it to March. LeBron's currently behind John Stockton, Dirk, Vince Carter, Kareem, and Robert Parrish on the all-time games played list. LeBron's at 1,495 regular season games, I believe. I don't think that counts playoffs. And based on the numbers, he should pass Stockton, Dirk, and Vince Carter this season. And he has a chance to pass Kareem too, but I think that's pushing it. If he wants to pass Kareem, he'll have to play 65 games this season. He played 71 last year, so it is possible. But given his age, I wouldn't be surprised to see him miss about 20 games just because of rest, injury, or some combination of the two. But LeBron's been doing great so far. He scored 16 points in the opener against the Timberwolves and 21 against the Suns. So then that's not great from a LeBron standard, but he had a 32-point triple-double last night, making him the first player to get a triple-double at this point in their career, which is definitely not something Vince Carter was doing in his 22nd season. LeBron, he also had 16 of those points in the fourth quarter. I was really hoping that he would stay in and play some towards the end, because if he would have had 8 more points, he would have set the record or tied his career record for most points scored in a quarter. So if he would have been able to break that record of his in his 22nd season, and at this point it's just piling on, but that would just be one more feather in his cap of, oh my gosh, LeBron is so great. But as great as LeBron played last night, the Lakers did almost blow that game. They were up 15 at halftime, and they let the Kings make it back into the fold, and the same thing happened again towards the end of the fourth. There was like 5 minutes, 6 minutes maybe left, and the Lakers were up 15, and the Kings went on a huge run, and it was mostly fueled by DeMar DeRozan. He just kept getting big buckets, and I like to see it. It was like DeMar DeRozan was just dead set on not getting embarrassed by LeBron one more time. But unfortunately for him, LeBron still owns him. I mean, playoffs, I'm sure too, but and regular season playoffs doesn't matter when DeMar DeRozan goes into the NBA Hall of Fame. If he does, they got to have LeBron do his induction speech. But I mean, DeRozan had 23 points last night. Domantas Sabonis had 29. So they played great, but ultimately they couldn't pull it out in the end. A lot of which was because they had a huge defensive lap with 18 seconds left that sealed the game. I mean, the Lakers passed the ball in bounds, and there was just no defense to be found in the paint. And it's embarrassing for a game that tight, that down to the wire to end like that, because that's just like some James Harden level defensive errors on the part of the King. So, you got to fix that. But Anthony Davis has been on a tear as well. He had 31 last night, 35 against the Suns, and 36 against the Timberwolves. It's about time for AD to become the undisputed best player on the Lakers. And LeBron pretty much said the same thing after yesterday's game. So, I mean, it's a matter of everybody is holding out the crown for AD to come and take it. And so far, it's looking like he's about ready to put it on his head, but I think that level of dominance has to go on for a little bit longer before I'm able to confidently say that he's the best player on the Lakers, but he's definitely off to a great start, that's for sure. And I think it would be huge if AD could get an MVP award. Like, that would go a long way to solidifying himself as the man on this Lakers team. Because that, as great as a player as he's been, that's one thing that's missing from his resume is an MVP award. So, I mean, Joker had 40 the other day, so not if Joker has anything to say about it, but we'll see. The Nuggets, they've been off to a pretty mixed start too, and we'll just have to see what happens with that. The Mavericks, and there's a bunch of teams that have just been kind of split, rocky start to the season, but that's pretty much all my thoughts on the NBA. In the world of college football, the biggest game this weekend was Texas A&M beating LSU 38-23. So I didn't watch the game in full. I was watching the World Series instead. Unfortunately, all these sports leagues don't get together and coordinate when they're going to put their games on. So you had the World Series started at 8. Texas A&M and LSU started at 7:30, and a dude's got to do homework at some point. So could have watched the first 30 minutes of the A&M game. Wasn't able to do it. By the time I finished my homework, it was 8:10. Had to watch the World Series. So by the time the World Series was over, there was like 5 minutes left in the A&M game, so I jumped back to that, which also goes to show you that college football games take too long. Baseball, for years, that was a big critique of baseball, is that it's too long and it's boring. Well, all the pitch clocks and everything have done a really good job of speeding up the game, because it's not that hard to sit through a baseball game these days. But for a football game that had a 30-minute head start on the World Series to end up going over by like 30 minutes too, that's like a whole extra hour. Like, that's a lot. College football really got to find a way to maybe not have so many timeouts in the last couple minutes. Pretty annoying. But regardless, I was rooting for A&M, and I'm glad they pulled it off. LSU dropped down to 16 in the rankings, and A&M is up to number 10, which I did not see coming after they lost to Notre Dame in week 1. Alabama beat Mizzou and jumped up a spot. Their O-line for Alabama had a pretty rough first half. They gave up 2 sacks on Milroe, and the refs called a horrible penalty against Alabama in the first quarter. So Mizzou got a delay of game penalty, but the refs didn't throw a flag or blow a whistle until after the play had started. So usually the referee will throw a flag immediately whenever the delay of game thing goes down, but they were slow on the draw this time, and the snap happened, and they threw down the flag right as Alabama was about to tackle Mizzou's quarterback, Brady Cook, and they ended up getting Alabama for a personal foul because Brady Cook got absolutely rocked. You could tell that, like, 2 seconds before he got tackled, he saw the flag. And so he loosened up and quit playing. And Alabama's D lineman just went right through him. And it was brutal. He came into that game with ankle trouble, too, and ended up hurting his hand after he was making a throw and ended up pretty much just whacking his hand on one of his O-lineman's helmets. So that poor dude couldn't win for losing. Alabama got held to just field goals in the first quarter, and it was looking like that was how the second quarter was going to end too. But Malachi Moore had a major interception towards the end of the half, and Milroe was able to take advantage of a free play and throw a long pass to Emmanuel Henderson. And Jam Miller ultimately got a touchdown for Bama coming off a 3-yard rush in the red zone. And Alabama ended up winning 34-0. This is the first time Mizzou's been shut out since 2019. And a much needed win, even though they were playing a really hobbled Mizzou team. Georgia had a bye last week, or this week, so did Tennessee. So no big shakeups there. And that's pretty much it as far as college football is concerned. In WWE, there was a big moment that happened Friday on SmackDown when you had the Usos reuniting after they had a pretty heated feud earlier this year. So on Raw on Monday, Solo Sikoa and the Bloodline, like I predicted last week, they came out and interfered and cost Jey Uso his Intercontinental title. Now, I don't like that Braun Breaker lost the Intercontinental title to Jey Uso a month ago. I don't know why they put it on Braun Breaker to start with, if they were going to give him that short of a reign. But now that Braun Breaker has the Intercontinental title back, I hope he goes on a pretty good, long, lengthy run with it. That being said, though, the Bloodline, Tama Tonga and Tonga Loa, were going to defend their championships. They were the tag team champions against the Motor City Machine Guns on Friday, and you could pretty much bet that Jey Uso was going to return the favor and end up costing them their tag team title, or their championship. And they did. The Motor City Machine Guns are now the tag team champions after only 2 weeks in WWE. And I'm just really happy for them. As somebody who remembers watching them in TNA years and years ago, it's good to see them finally make it to the top of the tag team mountain in the biggest wrestling company out there. But after the match, Jimmy Uso came out after Jay cost the Bloodline the championship, and they hugged, and it was a great moment. And then you had Roman Reigns walk out and kind of look at both of them questioningly. And it's really easy to tell that the Bloodline are building towards a War Games match. So the OG Bloodline, which was Roman Reigns, Jimmy and Jey Uso, and Sami Zayn, are building towards a War Games match with the new Bloodline of Solo Sikoa, Jacob Fatu, Tama Tonga, and Tonga Loa. So the missing element that I'm waiting to fall into place for the story is Sami Zayn, because he was also a member of the original Bloodline. And so far, he hasn't had anything to do with this Bloodline Civil War storyline. But I'm hoping that Jey Uso can suck him into it somehow, because there's a month before Survivor Series, and they really need to get going if they're going to try to make this build make more sense. I wish they would have done a better job of building to this Usos reunion, because it's really just happened over the last 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks. And as much flack as they gave Jey Uso at the end of last year to early this year, it's just jarring to see them make up so quickly. I mean, Jimmy Uso cost his brother a chance to win the world title at SummerSlam last year. At WrestleMania, Jey Uso speared Jimmy off the ramp through a table. And between him spearing his brother off a ramp through a table and this week, they've only had 2 interactions together on screen to go from that to hugging. I just, I don't know, I would have liked to see them develop that story more, because it just feels like they're fast tracking it. And the best stories are the ones that build up over time and leave the fans, just really gunning and hoping to see the reunion for weeks. And then you finally give it to them and they go nuts. It felt more like they put the idea of a reunion out there, and then before the fans could really start to clamor for it, they got it. But still, I'm excited for this Civil War Games match. Cody Rhodes and Gunther are going to be fighting next weekend for the Crown Jewel Champion of Champions belt. So far, I don't like the fact they're doing that. I think having your champions fight occasionally, like every few years, that can be a big deal if the story makes sense. But if this is going to be an annual thing, I don't like it. Just because one of them is going to have to lose, and whoever loses, it just makes the champion look weak. And Gunther, I don't know. I had to recomment. I think it's Gunther on how to. He's going to win because Kevin Owens is going to cost Cody Rhodes the match somehow. And it makes sense. Cody Rhodes doesn't look weak because he got cost the match. Gunther looks good because he gets to carry around the fancy crown jewel belt that they had made, that I guarantee you will not see again after the Raw, after the crown jewel show. Like, that's another thing that really just makes this match seem meaningless, is it's going to have zero long-term repercussions. And so I wish they would have really, if they were going to have a Cody versus Gunther match, I would have liked to have seen them make a real story reason for why they would fight, and not just have Triple H treat them like human action figures and say, I have this champion and this champion, throw them in the ring together, see what happens, see who's the champion of champions. Like that, I don't know, it's just lazy. And I know the Saudis asked for big attractions on their Saudi Arabia shows, so that was just their way of appeasing them. But I don't know, I think it could have been done better. And with that being said, the NFL, the Chiefs are still undefeated. I'm not going to lie, I haven't really had the time to get too in depth about the matchups this week and what all is going on, just because of all the other stuff going on. I know the Jets lost to the Patriots, which is just embarrassing. Both teams are 2-4 to this point in the season, or maybe even 2-5 at this point, but just not the season that Aaron Rodgers was probably anticipating when he was sitting at home injured all last year. And it just makes them firing their head coach look a lot sillier, because what's the point of making that big of a move if that's not the root of the problem? The problem is your team's not that good. And end of the day, moral of the story, coaches can only do so much when you don't have chemistry. And I will not be surprised to find out more as the season continues about locker room dramas setting back the Jets. So, with that being said, that's a wrap on this week's episode, and I can't wait to get into next week. Whatever the results of the World Series may be, I'm taking the Dodgers at this point. I think Game 3 is make or break. If the Dodgers win Game 3, it's going to be a sweep. I would bet. Maybe a gentleman's sweep, but if the Dodgers win Game 3, I don't see it going past 5 games. So I will see y'all then and can't wait to cover it. Have a good one.